Good evening, everyone. We are live right now and just making sure everything is up and running. Let's make sure. I'm always paranoid about that. I don't know. There it is. Okay, good. Okay, and make sure that we have everything good. All right. Wow. We already have plenty of questions here. Okay, so this is what we're going to do tonight. We have a snow event on the way. It looks to be pretty interesting. There's a lot to talk about here. So here's what I'm going to work on. Okay. I'm going to explain to you what I'm seeing, why I have the forecast I have, some changes I might be working on, and talk about another threat that I'm keeping an eye on. We're going to, of course, take all your questions from the premium section first, and I'll pick the best questions out of the YouTube chat. I see all you guys there. Thank you for joining. And just a tip, how much is it going to snow in my backyard thing, it's not probably going to be answered because we have a snow map, which I'm going to show, but it's also part of the actual header, and well, you can see it. So let's talk about this storm because it's pretty interesting. And let me pull up the radar here. And there's our storm starting to get its act together. I'm already starting to see some moderate bands of snowfall here. So it's an energetic system. We can see that pretty nicely here on the water vapor satellite picture. There it is. There's that little bugger. And here's our cold air coming in, setting the stage. So we're having our cold air settle in. So we have an environment where the jet stream overall is pretty progressive. Okay. We're not seeing much in the way of high latitude blocking in this pattern. It's generally a neutral to positive NAO. So that gives us a basic idea of the type of storm that we're dealing with here. This isn't a situation where a storm can move off the coast, bomb out, spin up, and produce a 12 to a 10 to 12 hour snowfall event. This is a fast moving storm, somewhere between 6 to 8 hours of precipitation. It's in and it's out, okay? But that doesn't mean you can't have heavy snow. What it means is that where you get your heavy snow is going to be very localized. It's going to happen in a specific area, and it's going to happen in a very short span of time. Based on what I'm seeing here, you have all the makings for a energetic shortwave. You have a pretty good jet stream here. It's starting to amplify here. You got your ridge axis starting to push towards the west coast. The further this gets towards Montana, the more amplified our shortwave will get. Why? Because you're basically shortening the wavelength, okay? And allowing it to have the potential to go into a negative tilt. Why is a negative tilt so important? The more that the trough goes into a negative tilt, let's say this is our trough, right? And it goes into a negative tilt like this, right? What happens is that on the eastern side of that tilt, the air dynamics spreads out. The reason why that's important is that that spreading out ahead of the trough allows for more rapid lifting. It enhances all the lifting dynamics with that storm. So when you enhance that, you enhance the potential for frontogenesis. And the frontogenesis, which is basically your thermal gradient, starts to focus in the lower level dynamics and lower level thermal gradient. So when I started to see that data showing up in all the model guidance of the trough being able to go into a slight negative tilt, that you would have vertical velocities at 500 millibars all showing up on the GFS, the European, the Canadian, whatever. Okay, all basically around the Jersey Shore up through southern New England. Then it opens up the next question, in which that is there going to be lower level dynamic thermal gradient forcing to enhance snow bands and to basically support heavy snow for a short period of time. Talking about anywhere around 1 inch, maybe 2 inch per hour snowfall rates between 3 a.m. and 7 a.m. along much of the Jersey coastal plain, through Long Island, into southern New England. And so I bring you this. This is the temperatures at 925 millibars on the 12Z GFS, European. And you see this right here? This is what you call a thermal gradient. And it's a tight one, just on its own at 925 millibars. It's a tight one. Now, let me show you the surface temperatures. And let's see here. We'll do this one right here. Again, we're going to focus on 7 a.m. I'll tell you what, let's zoom in on New Jersey if we can. Doesn't look like we can. Okay, that's fine. So let's say 7 a.m. Same time period. Okay, so you have your temperatures falling into the upper 20s to lower 30s. Right? You have a pretty good thermal gradient out here, right? Okay, so that's 925 millibars. Surface. Sea surface temperatures. Why am I interested in the sea surface temperatures? We have a natural thermal gradient. It's called a coastal front that sets up along the Jersey Shore. In the summer, we call this a sea breeze front. Sometimes it produces some thunderstorms, right? In the winter, this feature becomes very important in the forecasting of winter storms because sometimes it leads to an introduction of warmer air and leads to mixing. Sometimes that warmer air enhances your thermal gradient. Now, remember, we have cold air coming in as our low pressure system is starting to develop. It's not strong enough to drive this warm air in to the coastal plain, but it is strong enough to enhance a thermal gradient. And so my thinking was, ahead of the mesoscale guidance coming in, was that this should set up an environment where we have strong frontogenesis starting to develop, where we have the potential for snow bands to intensify because of this thermal gradient feature. And so that is how we generate this forecast. Now, in this forecast, in this yellow zone, generally I still think the idea of a 3 to 6 inch forecast is pretty good. Okay? But I am becoming increasingly concerned that there's going to be a band of snow somewhere in this area here that could support snowfall rates over 1 inch per hour. And that is why I am concerned that someone could get an isolated 8 inches out of this. Because of the setup that is showing up very clearly here in the guidance. And let me see here. I think on the NAM guidance, let's see, maybe the 12Z. Let's see if we can get frontogenesis here. Here we go. Okay, so there. See, it shows up really nicely on the NAM guidance, that frontogenesis. At 850 millibars. There are hints of it So the question in the forecast really comes down to where is that forcing most likely to happen. So that's why I kind of focused on here. Now, on the other side of this, if you're going to have strong lifting here, then you have to have sinking air somewhere else. And so that's why I cut down the totals here. Now, although we're going to have a higher snow ratio because we have colder air coming in, and that's going to lead to that environment becoming more likely to support a higher ratio, this area over here, northwestern New Jersey down through Philadelphia, I think it's going to be inhibited for having steady, moderate snow. You probably have light snow because you have strong lifting here. You have to have sinking air somewhere, so someone's got to lose out. So I'm going to focus over here for that losing out. And so in between that, you have your general 3 to 6 inches. Most locations probably around 3-4 inches of snow. And then further north and east up towards Boston, this is where I like the 4 to 8 inches widespread. Why? Because by that point, the storm will have the potential to develop and fully mature. So you're probably going to get more widespread heavy bands of snowfall here. So that's the thinking behind this storm. And I'll take your questions after I'm done with everything else, and we'll go over additional aspects. Again, the general idea here is from about 2 a.m. to 8 a.m. That's when we're going to see the bulk of this snow. Heaviest snow from 3 to 6. It's going to be pretty nasty for the morning rush hour on Friday morning. Now, the next storm I am keeping an eye on, and I talked about this in the premium section, and I've been hinting at this for a while. And let me pull up the European ensemble guidance. And basically, that's around the middle of the month. There is a heck of a strong signal here. Other meteorologists have been talking about this as well, along with me. There is a very strong signal around the 15th to 17th of January, where you have your P&A ridge popping up here, building up into Alaska. You got a weak negative EPO signature showing up here, and you have heights crashing along the East Coast here, and a somewhat negative NAO pattern starting to form here in the guidance. The Europeans showing it, the GFS showing it, the Canadians showing it. Something is going to have the potential to pop here. I don't know the details yet, but if I was looking for a pattern where I would look for a blockbuster winter storm, this time period would be it. After that, I like the idea of a bit of a relaxation, and then February, I'm seeing the potential for another rather cold and stormy period. And that is because, as I've been talking about, the polar vortex is going to continue to get hit, and it's going to continue to be in periods of getting stretched out. We know that based on the data that we have. Where are you? Right here, where we continue to see that EP flux transporting that warm air in, punching at the polar vortex. So those who said winter canceled, it has backfired on you. And oh, by the way, the MJO, it's on the move. Let's refresh this. It's pretty likely to go into phase 8. Now, it'll eventually go into a neutral phase because that's what typically happens with La Nina. But don't be surprised if it swings right back into a phase 7 and 8 once again, keeping us rather active for much of this month, except for the very end, and much of February. So we'll keep an eye on that and see how that takes place. So those are my general thoughts on the storm, the next one that's likely to come, and the pattern going forward. I could probably go into more detail, but I kind of feel like I'm repeating myself in terms of the pattern overall. When I'm taking a look at the latest data that's coming out, I think that, let's see here, the new New European just came out, and we're waiting on the NAM coming out. And yeah, here it is. And there's that signature again. There it is. There's our low pressure system. There's our signature. There's our coastal front. See, you can see the warm air trying to push in with some mixing right off the coast. Doesn't last long though, because this storm, like I said, is booking. But there is our heavier band showing up very nicely. And it matches up with the going forecast very nicely. So, now I am going to take some of your questions. If you have them, please throw them in there. Card is off tonight. Hopefully he's doing well. He actually emailed me and said, "Hey, I'm not going to be there." I'm like, "Oh, it's okay. It's all right. Look, you can't be here every time." So hopefully everything's going well with him. But as always, if you guys have any questions, please shoot them in there, and I will be happy to answer them. Let's see. Matthew Myers asks, "It looks pretty certain that the MJO will reach phase 8. Yep. Do you think we can get to phase 1 and 2 also, or is it more likely to go back to phase 7 at some point? I think it goes back to phase 7, moves into phase 8. Whether it moves into phase 1 and 2 in February, I'm not sure about, but it would have to be in a situation where you have enhanced mountain torque and there's some major disruption in the polar vortex to drive that change into tropics. Because I don't see that happening with tropical forcing alone. One thing to keep an eye on is La Nina should start to weaken, and how that influences tropical forcing can be a little bit interesting. Let's see here. Our Pat Sod asks, will the polar vortex split? Any chance to sustain cold? I don't think it'll split. And the only way you're going to get sustained cold is if the polar vortex splits. I do think we get waves of cold. And some of these cold shots are going to be brutal. You know, one of the things I always say is that I'd rather have sustained cold where I can get used to it rather than dropping down to 20 and then the next couple of days it's back in the 50s and back into the 20s again. It messes with your body and everything. So you're going to feel it big time when those Arctic air masses invade. It's just that I think the theme, and I've been saying this for a while now, for this winter is transient cold. It comes in, it does its work, it leaves, it comes back. That's going to be the theme. That's typically the theme in La Nina years. It was the same thing pretty much in every La Nina year you could think of. Warmer La Nina years, the cold air comes in less frequently. Colder ones, it comes in more frequently. So if you're looking for sustained cold, then you're looking for a major disruption of the polar vortex. But right now, I don't see any data to support that. James Davison asks, what effect does the current snowpack have on the storm? Great question. Great question. Because what that does is that it alters the lower level boundary layer. Now let me show you. Let me pull this up again. Let's see here. Temperatures. Here we go. Okay, so we're going to see a little bit of melting, obviously, from today, right? But you still have a pretty good snowpack in place. And so what it does is that it alters the boundary layer just a little bit. And look what we got there. There's our boundary layer. This is from our snowpack right here. And so what that does is that it enhances the thermal gradient. So it enhances your coastal front right there. So that's what the snowpack does in that situation. Let's see here. What are you expecting to see from the 0Z models? I expect that there's probably going to be some convective feedback with some of the mesoscale models produced. And so I would not be surprised if the NAM just does this NAM thing and just produces an outlandish snowfall. Or it could go the other way. I expect convective feedback error. Okay, because there's a lot going on here. I expect the European to keep on what it's doing with the 18Z. The GFS will probably shift to it. but your mesoscale models are going to go on a little bit of a blip, which typically happens just out ahead of a storm, and then it'll back off into precip a little bit. Snowball X's. So as we go forward through winter here, are we going to see storms slow down, or are we going to see quick hitter storms? If we get our negative NAO, like on what I'm looking at for the 15th, then those storms will slow down. That's the key in terms of the storm speed. You need a high latitude blocking, a traffic cop, so to speak, to slow everything down. So you're looking for an upper level low around 50 north, 50 west to act as a traffic cop to slow down the storms on the coastal plain. When that happens, that's when we'll see a more prolonged storm event. And so I definitely see that being a potential for January 15th or so. And I think we're going to see that again around early to mid-February. Let's say February 8th or the 15th, somewhere in that ballpark. Looking at the models, the precip fields seem to be decreasing. What are the snow ratios you're expecting? Okay, the precipitation fields should be decreasing, because what the models are trying to see is that if you're having strong lifting in one place, then you have to have subsidence somewhere else. So it's trying to collapse the western side of the precipitation shields, but at the same time dealing with all these other lifting parameters, it doesn't know how to handle that all too well. Meanwhile, you still do have snow ratios, which I'm looking at around 12 to 1, 13 to 1, somewhere in that ballpark. If we get that strong mesoscale lifting, someone's going to be in the 15 to 1 ballpark along the coast. Watch that around the Jersey Shore and around Long Island. But again, the idea here is that this is a fast-moving storm. It doesn't have a ton of moisture to work with because it's moving too fast. So you're having that adjustment. That's why I went lower on the western side of this forecast. Let's see. I find the transfer to the coast is always such a tricky part about storms. Yeah, it is a very difficult part of the storms. You have a low heading towards the benchmark, but transfer sometimes draws the front running precip. Yes. With the transfer process, it's not simply the surface low. And when I was younger, in my teens, and I'd look at these low pressure systems, I'd say, well, it's already in the coastal waters and it's already intensifying. That means everything should be getting colder. But it's not that simple. You have the transfer of the surface low, but you also have transfer of the mid-level lows. And if that is delayed or the 850 millibar low is stretched while it's trying to transfer over, then basically you lock in warm air at the mid-levels, and instead of that transfer over from rain to snow, it's just rain and sleet and just a mess, and then finally transferring over to snow. That has caused many a bust in my forecasts, especially when I was younger, in trying to understand those dynamics. So it's always a pain in the neck to try to forecast for. Paul asks, so we're having a mild period at the end of January. Yep, I think so. Does it look like above normal temperatures? Probably a couple of days, yeah. I definitely think so. Away from the area, while coastal takes time to get started, that must be part of something else. Pete S. feels, I feel like everything in recent years is a Miller B. Yeah, recently, yes. What would have to happen through February to have a good old Miller A come up from the Gulf? Really hard to pull off this year because that is typically found in an El Nino year, a weak El Nino year to be specific. In order for that to happen, you would need to have a strong shortwave in the subtropical jet stream. You'd have to be able to crush the ridge. Let me pull up 500 millibar. This is perfect. Okay. So, let me go back here. Actually, you know what? Let me just pull up 500 millibars and show you. Okay, so what you would need is to keep this ridge suppressed. You would need for this trough to dig into the Gulf of Mexico. You would need this upper level low to be deeper and dig to the south of the Aleutians, allowing for this ridge to build And you would need the polar vortex to split to drop this upper level, the polar vortex in the troposphere, down towards around, let's say, the Hudson Bay, supporting a negative NAO pattern. And you'd have to have a trough axis right about here to allow for the low pressure system to track right up the coast. Essentially, completely change the 500 millibar pattern. Kind of hard to pull off. Let's see. Is this a storm the trigger you feared? No, it's not. But it's part of the pattern that we have overall. The storm on the 15th, that has my attention. Because that could be something that kind of resets the whole pattern and could shortchange the mild pattern I'm looking for after it. If it really, really amplifies and starts to kick off a true negative NAO pattern, which I'm not seeing right now, but I'm just putting it out there. If that happens, then, well, let's just say there's a reason why I have a lot of interest in that storm. Does the storm around 115 have the potential to be similar to the 2010 Boxer Day blizzard? I don't like to make comparisons with it because it's kind of different dynamics. I would say that it has the potential of being one of our bigger winter storms of the season if everything plays out. Has the potential. No guarantees though. Between the storm now and the 15th of January and February, we will have cold temperatures or we could warm up above normal. We'll get cold and then we'll moderate. So we'll get cold after that storm and then we moderate towards the end of the month. Let me check out YouTube. Holy smokes. Yeah, YouTube is pretty cooking. Holy Bob Dole with a minute. Wow. Okay, let's go see what questions we can find. Let's see here. Is there any other snowstorms after this one? Yeah, watch out for the 15th. Let's see here. I hope they track the storm more. Let's see. I'm looking for some question from Michael Cassidy here about snow ratios. What factors influence your snow ratio in your forecast, and is the snow ratio related to how the ice crystals form and how they're able to pack on the ground? Yes, yes, and yes. Okay. It's relation to the snow crystals and the temperatures at the mid-levels where they form in the clouds, which you can kind of get a good feel on in terms of the surface temperatures and how that transitions up to 850 millibars. But another factor to consider is also the rapid lifting, okay? Because lifting in the atmosphere cools the atmosphere. So when you have this rapid cooling in isolated pockets, it enhances the way that snow crystals develop and the ratio in those snow crystals. So it's a combination of those factors. Now, this is not a widespread 15-to-1 ratio type storm, but there are going to be pockets where you're going to see that if the mesoscale lifting pans out, which based on everything I'm looking at in the mesoscale model data, certainly looks like it. So I would say yes. I mean, in that aspect, you want to consider mesoscale lifting. Another thing to consider is the cooling of the atmosphere and also the relative humidity in the atmosphere. In this case, you got enough moisture stable, that it would support a ratio in general of around 12-to-1, maybe 13-to-1. But again, I'm really, really keeping an eye on that enhancement along the coast for that 15-to-1. Let's see. Good evening. Came out and it took a shift west. Now we're getting to questions of shift west, shift east. I'm always curious to see how people see like this shifting west and east. I'm always, usually when people start talking about these references of west and east, it's not a huge, huge shift. Let me pull up, actually that's the wrong thing I want to pull up. This is it right here. Okay. So this is 12Z. And this is really cool because you can kind of see all the low pressure systems here. Now, here is a setup from 12Z. And this is where they're focusing all the low pressure systems. pretty well clustered area. Well, is it much different from 0Z? Let's take a look. Load it up. We'll jump to Friday morning. It's a little bit, it's definitely further west, but that's also why we're seeing an increase in the snowfall. But it's still the same speed. Now, why is it further west? Let's answer that question. Is it models trending? No. This is why. When you take a look at the shortwave here, it's stronger. Stronger shortwave means that it's going to have a better negative tilt. The more amplified that the trough is, the further west the low pressure can be. At the same time, there's a limit on how far west it can actually get because of the timing and the speed of this whole pattern. You're not going to be capable of producing a strong negative tilt, which means you're not going to be capable of pulling the low pressure system onto the coastal plain. And it was never a threat to be a lake cutter. I mentioned this, what was it? I think end of last week. I said, look, this is not going to be a lake cutter. And I got mocked for it online, of course, by some people. And they mentioned, oh, well, it's a positive NAO. Of course it would be a lake cutter. No, not all positive NAOs are the same. If you have a giant polar vortex sitting over the Hudson Bay, guess what? That's going to suppress storm tracks. So it's the pattern overall that's an issue. But the reason why it's further west is because the shortwave is being measured, or the observations are finding that the shortwave is stronger, and therefore you increase the negative tilt, therefore a more westward track. Let's see. NAM is a better model than others. Well, Danny, you're gonna live and die with that one. That's a good one. Let's see. Wow, there is just a lot. Let's see here. Could Central New Jersey see 6+ inches? I think the coast has a shot. If there's going to be a place to do it, it's going to be like Monmouth and Ocean County coast. All models are based on 10-to-1 ratio. Bingo, that's right. But there are some model guides you can use where you can make that adjustment. 15-to-1, 2 inches normally makes it about 3 inches. Yeah, about that, yeah. Will the extensive snow cover in Canada and the northern U.S. help our winter pattern the next 4 weeks? Yes, it does. See, snow cover acts like kind of like a ice in your cooler, right? It preserves whatever food or drink you put in there. Keeps it cold, right? Same thing with the snowpack. It keeps the Arctic and polar air masses cold and prevents them from moderating quickly. So by the time they get here, they still have a heck of a punch. So it definitely matters. Excuse me. Let's see here. Looking for, wow, there's just so many questions. If I try to take all of them, as I said, yeah. Snow map is on the website. So definitely, if you're asking, what do you think of X and Y county or town, check out the map, use the map. On the public side, it's not a Google map, so you'll have to, get an idea where you live and check it out, On Tribal Tidbits, it mentions that the growth. What exactly is that? It's the snow growth. It's the rate in which a snow crystal or the crystals of a snowflake grow. Steve, what do you mean? I get that all the time. I don't know. Sometimes I don't know what I mean. New York City 0.2 so far. Normal for a season is about 30 inches. Yep. And normally we see a lot of 30 inches in January and February. Let's see here. Okay. Well, I'm going to come back to YouTube. And let me just jump back into the premium section here because, well, we have a lot of questions here still. Let's see. Lloyd accidents may be a bit off topic, of course, as long as we're not talking about anything non-weather. It's all good. Unless you want to talk about the Mets, which I'm always up for, or the Kansas City Chiefs. But could you show an upper-level map showing good blocking and one with no blocking? For example, this upcoming storm has no blocking, which would be a good example. Maybe later in the models there's an example of good blocking and negative NAO. Let's see here. Want to show, maybe the GFS might be able to pull that off. So this right here is an example of no blocking. Okay. You can have your storm just track right in. There's nothing to stop it. You have below normal heights over Greenland. So any storm just is a pathway right up into the northern Atlantic. Nothing to slow it down, right? The opposite of that is almost an example of this. Let's see. This is perfect. Okay. So this is an example of really great blocking. Okay. You have your ridge up here. You have your below normal heights starting to set up around the Aleutians. This looks a little screwy though. Usually you don't have all these upper level lows spinning about. So this is probably a model error out here. But you have your ridge building here. Don't be surprised if this corrects to a nice big trough here, encompassing these upper level lows into one storm. You have a ridge axis here, nice trough. There's your trough axis. This could be another storm, but again, I never trusted GFS this far out in terms of details. But there's your negative NAO pattern. There's your 50-50 low setting up. Okay, this is a nice, you can either use a trough or an upper level low. Either one works really nice. And so what this all does is that it slows everything down and allows this trough to come in. And there's your negative tilt setting up. Now, whether or not this all sets up properly, well, we'll see. And I would not trust this as being verbatim. But if you're looking for an example, well, there's your example. There's your example. Hello, high latitude blocking. There's your Arctic air. And here's maybe another storm. So there are plenty of storms afoot. And we'll be back to YouTube. Okay, I'll check it out in a second. Maybe off top. But yeah, I hope that's a good example. Alan Greenspan says, you got my attention with the next one as I have travel plans on the 19th. When will you have a better handle on the potential and timing of the next one? First of all, I want to get through this storm. Probably I'll have a good handle on the basics around the 10th and 11th, and then details 13th. Usually it's how it works out. I want to see the pattern kind of evolve in terms of the high latitude blocking and whether we're dealing with an east-based negative NAO or a west-based negative NAO, because that's kind of a little bit wishy-washy right now. The storm on the 15th and February will be focused on the west coast or east coast cold. Too early to tell. Cold air masses are going to hit the Rockies and then bleed east. That's going to be the theme. With that being said, again, if the polar vortex really gets disrupted, then game on. Sorry for missing the first half of the discussion. You mentioned a possible storm for the 15th. Which area in the eastern part of the country will affect, and can it be a large storm? Again, kind of looks like a focus on the east coast. Don't know the details of the storm yet, but it has the potential of being a pretty impressive one. Underwhelming season. Chris Earth says, underwhelming season so far. Everything is off the coast or up into the northeast and no blocking. Patience. I think that we're going to see some changes. Stephen Force, this snow ratio, should I grease up the snow blower or get out the leaf blower? The further west you are, the more you'll use the leaf blower. The further east you are, the more likely that the snow initially will be a little bit heavier wet and then become lighter as the storm progresses. We need blocking, indeed. The storm that affected the Mid-Atlantic yesterday has become a monster down to 9 to 24 millibars. Absolutely. extremely low pressure system in the northern Atlantic. How come that one is not wrecking the upper level wave pattern, causing extreme weather downstream, or is it? And that is why this potential for January 15th storm. It actually is. It is creating havoc, but it's creating havoc for the European pattern, not necessarily our pattern just yet. But I think that what happens with that storm is that you get this disruption setting up, and it sets up a wave, kind of like a dominoes, to set up the strong high latitude blocking that sets up for the middle of the month and beyond. Now the question is, does that allow for relaxation, or do we see a reload? Don't know yet. I've always talked Mets with you, Big Steve. Yep. Any interesting football games this week in terms of weather for the end of the regular season? Nothing really stands out to me, to be honest with you. Let me pull this up real fast and take a quick look. Where are you? Here we are. Okay, for Saturday and Sunday, nothing really too big for Saturday, really. Sunday could be interesting around the Ohio River Valley, maybe for rain. Is Buffalo playing at home? That could be an issue, but nothing really stands out as too significant. Okay, let's go back to YouTube because apparently there's Paul Jones. Okay, let's see if I can find it. So let's see. Okay, and wow, there is just a ton of questions. Holy. Okay. I don't know if I can find it. Do you know what it was, huh? What was the question? Ah. Okay. I'll have to find it in a bit. Let's see here. Oh God, you're terrible. Filter the damn things, will you? I don't know how. But let me see here. I got. Well, okay. Okay. Let me try to help you read some of these questions. Okay. Let's see here. Wow. Somebody's being very persistent here. Hang on. Okay. Slow down, everybody. I'm trying to help. Are we okay? Hold it. Nicholas Vela, are we going to get more than expected and possible winter storm warning? Yeah, I was gonna. Nicholas Vela's been persistently asking the same question. I do not know whether or not they'll issue a winter storm warning. That's up to the National Weather Service, and I try not to forecast what they do because sometimes they have other factors that we don't know about. But what I will say is this. If you're in that yellow zone that I have, you have a chance to overperform. Let's see here. On the 3 to 6 range in New York City, will it lean more towards 3 or 6? If you're in that heavier band, you'll lean towards 6. If you're in the moderate band, you'll lean towards 3. So the northern Manhattan's more likely to be 3, southern Manhattan's more likely to be 6. Let's see here. Wow. Okay. So again, we're gonna stay away from how much I'm going to get in terms of snowfall. I will say in terms of timing, the bulk of this storm is going to be in the early morning hours. Most of you guys are going to be sleeping from 2 a.m. to 8 a.m. You're going to wake up to a lot of snow on your car, and you're having to dig out of it. So I would definitely be prepared for that, especially if you're along the coast. Let's see. You're urged to check the HRR models. Yeah, that's like a whole slew of people who start to come in and bug you to check it. All right, let's check it. The 0Z came in. That's why. Let's check the 0Z guidance. Let's see how far it came out yet. Let me try tropical tidbits. Maybe that might have it full out. You think the storm will hit? Let's see. The 15th or 16th in general time period because NAO goes negative. Yes, Nick, that's going to be part of the reason why. There's occasionally a northwest trend with these bands. Will your thoughts process follow that or not? I'm going to follow more of the thermal gradient rather than trends. I am the man, apparently. Well, there you go. Rose. There's a lot of great questions here, guys. Looks like NWS State College isn't going to issue winter storm watches for North Central PA. Yeah, I wouldn't expect that for that area. They're going to miss out on the bulk of this. It's going to be very light stuff. Let's see here. I think 48 for Edison. Do you have any thoughts on the potential for the low being closer to the coast? It's really hard to pull that off because of the pattern in place overall. Wow, I'm really impressed. Thank you guys for all this. Let's see. Could you take a look at the HRR? Gee, I'm seeing what you mean. Lots of questions for the HRR. Okay, well, let's take a look at the HRR, shall we? And this is the 0Z guidance. Let me just rock this through. Let's see what it's showing. And okay, there's our storm coming in. There's our old primary. There's our strong low pressure system. There's our burst. See, again, this is a fast moving storm. There's our burst of heavy snow. Now, let's see what type of okay, this ought to work. For that time period, pretty strong thermal gradient. Let's see if we have whoa, no wonder why. Well, that is a very impressive snow forecast, and it pretty much sets up with what I'm forecasting. Philly gets up to 4 inches on this. Excuse me, I'm not sure whether I'd buy that just yet, because again, if you have intense banding here, it's going to be awfully hard to get a sustained moderate snowfall in Philadelphia. Maybe just to the east, I could buy that. Let's see. Here, we'll do radar here. I want to see whether or not I can get... I was looking for a sounding. It's not coming up yet. Let's see if it comes up on here. Nope, not fully out yet. Okay. Well, what the HRR is showing is that banding I was talking about and the thermal gradient setting up. Hopefully a little bit later, maybe we can get a potential for a sounding on it. But the HRR is showing an area, especially around Monmouth and Ocean County, down through Atlantic County, in New Jersey, for a heavy band of snow, roughly about 2 inches per hour. It moves fast. It's basically in this area, maybe a little bit further west, maybe like right around here. But it's right on that line. And it's driven by all the dynamics that we've been talking about. Looks like Philly might get a bad thump, probably just one though. I think that Philadelphia is going to have a shot at seeing some moderate snow. But again, if we get that intense band off to the east, it's going to lead to suppression further to the west. So that's why you can't have both. You know, one or the other, right? You're either going to get widespread moderate snow out of this, or you're going to get light snow in an area of really intense snowfall if you're going to have this banding. And that's just basically due to physics involved in the process of strong lifting. Can bandings shift? Absolutely, they can. But in this case, they're not, because you have limited lifting properties involved in this storm. When you have something like a major nor'easter where you have the storm slow down, then you can get various different areas of frontogenesis at various levels of the atmosphere to create different banding. And those banding features interact with each other as well. And some of you know this as, you get what some people call dry sliding, but it's really not. It's just sinking air within the snow shield. So you get some areas where you just get flurries, and then two other areas surrounding it that's just pouring snow. And they're driven by different frontogenical factors, from 850 millibars of surface, moisture gradients, deformation zones, all sorts of different factors. Let's see here. NWS is back down for the city over the past 2 days for what it's worth. Yeah, they have. Let's see here. I think I missed that one question that you were talking about, Susan. Oh, Paul Jones, right?
Yep.
Okay, hi Steve. It's Mr. Summerton. Oh, Mr. Samanti! Applegate School. Oh my God. Okay, you guys. Oh my God. Yes. Oh my God. Okay, Mr. Samanti was my elementary school gym teacher, and he actually got me into trusting for physical fitness and stuff, and helping. I was terrified of heights, still am, and I wouldn't do the pull-up bar because I was terrified of standing on the chair. I just couldn't do it. I'd freak the hell out, and he'd give me the courage to do it. Great teacher. Wow. God, that's funny. Right in field. That is awesome. Go easy on this storm. I'll try. But man, oh my God, that's amazing. Oh my God, that is amazing. Ah, boy, that's funny. Oh man, I can tell you that the teachers that helped me become the person I am, right, from Applegate, Eisenhower Middle School, Freelboro High School, they are really, along with my parents, of course, unsung heroes, in which they would listen to a kid just babble on about the weather and give them the forecast. So that's just crazy. Wow. Um, oh my God, that's cool. Let's see. Mary Miller, seems like Lancaster's always originally in the sweet spot, then edges out. Yeah. Sorry. I do think that the interior is going to see their snowfall. I really, really do. But it's not going to be this one. What you guys need is really good high latitude blocking, which again we'll watch. Apparently, there's gaining support for it. Let's see. News Talk Team. Well, that's a cool one. I know it's not your area. Okay. However, your thoughts for Williamsport North on snow sides, just up in area visiting friends, was wondering. This storm is going to feature maybe 1-2 inches of that, maybe. What you're going to have to watch out for is lake effect bands after this, with the cold air coming in and some lake squalls coming in. Okay? Be aware of that. Typically, you're not going to see a forecast for that until about 24, 36 hours out. But after this storm leaves, the Arctic air coming in, that's where it could get a little interesting up in those spots. I can't believe it. That's insane. I'm still like, oh my God, my old gym teacher. I know. I finally saw it. It took me long enough. Oh my God. And of course, there's also Mrs. Samanti, who, we miss her quite a bit, who also was just an amazing teacher as well. Oh, wow. Just amazing. Absolutely amazing. I'm kind of like, I'm like, oh my God. That's crazy. Never, always, always, always cherish the teachers that you have when growing up, because they're, you know, there are good ones out there that
Yeah, there are.
if it wasn't for me, if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be who I am. Yep.
Nicholas fella is being very persistent.
About how does oh well, Nicholas really wants to know about the HRR.
He wants to
Um,
know what the max snowfall is going to be for like Long Island and stuff. He's got a wave of the same question over and over.
all right, well, Nicholas, the max you can get out, and this is not just for Long Island, but this whole area right here. Um, the max I could see is 8 inches. That's like max. That's like everything works out perfectly, and the reason why is that the timing of this, it's moving so fast that you'd have to be able to maximize that. Now, here's something that I found interesting.
This is the question.
Yeah.
Just so we. What is the high end of snowfall for Central South Shore Long Island?
They high.
Looks like it's only 3 to 6.
Not just high, but high.
High.
High. Way up there. High. Okay. 8 inches. 8 inches is your max. Once everything gets maxed out. Now, here's something I found very interesting in the guidance here. And we'll see if we can pull this up. Let's see here. Maybe 18Z shows it up better. Okay. This is what kind of caught my attention. This is lightning. Okay. Showing up. And this is for around 4 a.m. Now, this was the 18Z guidance. I'm waiting for the 0Z guidance to come all the way out to show this. It's taking some time. It'll probably load after this is over. But that caught my attention. Because this means you got convective banding going on. Yeah, thunder snow. Yeah. That's why I'm kind of like, that's why when I started making the forecast, I'm like, wait a minute. So I started looking at the skew T's. I started looking at the parameters involved in this forecast here. And I want to see, maybe I could pull that up on here with the HRR. No, I'm not going to be able to. That's disappointing. What catches my attention is with that potential for lightning in these storms is that you could rapidly enhance the potential for your intense snowfall and the aspect of your snow ratios being amplified. When you have convective snow bands, you have rapidly rising air, and it tends to augment your storms. So when I'm seeing that signal showing up, that's why I got what I got here. Thanks for the shout out, Steve. Best to you and your family. If you ever in Freehold, look me up. I'm actually live in Freehold. I live in Freehold. Actually, we're looking for a house in Freehold. So yeah, there we go. Eventually, if the market ever comes back to reality, I'm not paying $500,000 for a house that was taxed last year for $250,000. Thank you very much. So we're totally looking. Yeah, but yeah, we're in Freehold, just rocking it out. We're by Applegate all the time, actually. Man, that's wild. Let's see here. Boston area, I'll be our first snow. Yeah, it will be. Let's see. Let me go back here. See if there's any more premium questions. So far, no. Okay, that's good. And whoa, we're already at 9 o'clock. Holy Bob Dole, look at that. Wow. Time flies. Holy cannoli. Time flies when you're having fun. So, what we're dealing with right now, let's just recap. We're having cold air transport starting to build in. Here comes our cold front for tonight. Let's refresh this. There's our developing storm. Cold air's coming in. Seeing it very nicely here on the Water Vapor satellite picture. Nice little shortwave. In fact, let's go back here and pull up this. There it is. There's our shortwave right there. So everything's kind of coming in, setting up in place. As we get closer, okay, models are going to go a little wacky. So don't worry about that. I will not be going nuts about that in terms of changing the forecast or jumping one way or another. I think we're in pretty good shape. Let's see if the 0Z guidance has come in yet for NAM. Let's see here. NAM guidance. It's just coming in. Of course, we've had some issues with models taking their time coming in, unfortunately. Let's see if 3K NAM's in yet. And not yet, not fully. It's just starting to come out. 12K is not out yet. And 32K is not out yet. So it's just starting to come out. So I'll be checking it out later when we get done. But don't be surprised if the models go a little wacky in terms of handling with the convective feedback. You're probably going to see some really outlandish snowfall numbers, which of course someone's going to post them and make a big deal about them. Don't jump on that, okay? Because that's what's happening is that all this data and all these factors are coming in. So as a result, you're going to get a convective feedback error. So don't jump on that yet. Remember, this is a fast-moving storm. So you only have so much time for snow to accumulate. And unless you're trying to make the argument that you're going to get 3 to 4 inch per hour snowfall rates, which I don't see any support for that, then it's really hard to push over that 8-inch amount. Okay? So just remember that. Keep that in the back of your mind. But overall, I think that the forecast is pretty well set up. I kind of like where we're at. Again, let me just go to... If you're looking for the forecast and you are just looking for the public forecast, hit the public dashboard, and there's your forecast right here. And you could check everything out right here, including the details. And oh, by the way, you could also buy merchandise while you're doing that. Yep. Okay. Let's see here. Anything interesting? HRR still predicts a pretty substantial storm. Yeah, I mean, look, this is going to be a pretty big deal for the region because, one, we really haven't had a widespread snowfall. So that's a factor. And two, when we're looking at this evolution of the storm, it's happening at the worst possible time in the middle of morning rush hour. So, yeah, it's going to be a bit of an issue. That is for sure. Let's go Mets. Indeed. Can we end this PA snow drought? No. I forbid it. Dave Kern says 2 inches. Dave Kern is a very nice man. That's all I'm going to say. How much is the HRR new run showing for New York City? Basically what the going forecast is for the most part. We have to stop the PA snow drought. You should run a campaign for that. Seriously, it'd be interesting. Let's see here. Back to community chat. Let's see here. What short-term model do you feel is the most accurate? This is a great question by Frank Walter. That's a great question. I would say I'm using... See, the way I use models is different from a lot of ways that other people use models. I don't use it as a whole. I take pieces of models based on what parameters I'm looking for and looking at and compare them and then kind of create my own ideas, right? So I think if you use a mix of the NAM and the HRR in understanding the lifting parameters and the thermal gradients, and you look at it in a four-dimensional box in your mind, right? Um, and you set that up, then when you combine the models, then what you could do is create the lifting parameters. So best model, it's not about the best model, it's the best idea, right? What is the most reasonable solution based on the synoptic environment that you're in, right? So synoptic environment, fast moving storm. Mesoscale environment, impressive thermal gradient enhanced by snowpack. So, which model handles the low level dynamics, i.e., your surface temperatures, and how well does that match up to where the heaviest precipitation is? You combine all that, you look for the coastal front, boom, there you go. So, a mix of both. Let's see here. Snow on, Steve. Thanks for all you guys. Thank you guys. Okay, it is 9:06. And I am surprised I'm still awake. So that is true. I don't sleep. I'm like a 5-year-old child. I don't sleep. I just keep going. I just keep.
You'll crash
Eventually, yeah. Especially when we actually get a big storm, I just don't sleep. I just sit here working and doing updates, and then eventually, after the storm's done, I pass out for 2 days, which is not good.
Close.
Well, close. There's that one storm where I was up for like 28 straight hours. And then I slept and I thought it was still Friday. It ended up being Sunday, which, wasn't too happy about. But what are you going to do? So that's where we're at right now. I think I'm going to end it for tonight. We'll see how the storm evolves. Perhaps, depending if there's anything that significantly changes, I will have a live chat tomorrow night. But that's only if things really, really change with the storm. Other than that, we will be having, I'll have constant updates on Twitter, Facebook, and of course, premium members in the premium chat. But again, if I see something significant change or I need to update anything or anything of that nature, I will have a live chat and we will walk through everything. But my warning to you guys, Friday morning, be prepared for some significant delays in your travels. Or just stay home. One or the other. Okay, guys, have a good evening. And as always, stay safe out there.